Okay, so we're looking at the use of a withdrawal reflex and how it relates to fighting. The simplest way of thinking about this is if you were to touch something hot, you would naturally withdraw from that object. So it's a very simple exercise, and you see this a lot in traditional martial arts. You'll reach out, you'll imagine that you're touching something hot, and then you'll get that sudden pull back. Now, if we do that to one side of the body, the opposite side goes out. And the most basic idea of that is in karate, etc., where they're pulling and punching at the same time. Unfortunately, the carryover for that is normally pretty weak because you've got the wrong input, okay? In terms of, if you're training someone who's a fighter, it's very important that they have that idea of being in the fight within their training. And that balance of being in a relaxed state, but a highly aroused state at the same time is kind of imperative to success and making correct choices within the fight. Within the training, if I need to work on that pull as I'm punching, so the basis of using, for instance, a jab, so first of all, I've got to get the idea of the range right, stepping from my base into my lead, loading the shoulder as I step, pulling on that opposite side as I throw the punch, and then withdrawing again to recover the punch. So in terms of slowly, there'll be a withdrawal on this side, and then another withdrawal after the punch. Now that withdrawal is happening from the feet all the way up through the body in these chains. And there's a lot more talk of this late with research into fascia, everything else. But in terms of, it's being sort of spoken about, especially it seems in Chinese martial arts for a lot longer. And it's kind of carried over into mixed martial arts. But some of the people that you could see this happening in kind of the early sort of noughties, people like Frank Shamrock, the way that they trained, they were connecting very well internally, and you could see that the carryover, even though a lot of the time they weren't training with great weight, the actual training that they were doing, the pushing and pulling motions that they were doing within their training and use of the Swiss ball, etc., you could see that there was a lot of withdrawal type motions happening within the training, which was carrying over directly into the fight, which is obviously what you want. Now I know a lot of people work on their gross strength, or what we call your non-specific strength. And the closer we get to a fight, the more specific everything becomes. I expect people when they come to me, I mean, I'm used to dealing with people at quite a high standard who are relatively strong anyway, in terms of they can do most of their basic movements relatively well. And what they come to me for is kind of the fine tuning of that and getting those extra little bits which will make the difference. And we've had that successfully in professional boxing, in professional K1 and professional MMA. Now little things, as soon as you understand concepts like withdrawal reflex, and you can have that as an exercise when you're doing pull-ups or chin-ups. So if we think of just a neutral grip chin-up, and here's a really good one to try. As you're lowering through the chin, pick a point that you're then going to withdraw back up very quickly, very rapidly on. Then come back down, go a couple of inches deeper, and then withdraw again. But work on the speed of that withdrawal. Or pick a mid-range point where you're going to rapidly withdraw and relax repeatedly. Now, going back, people used to talk a lot about tendon strengthening exercises. And for the most part, a lot of these concepts were in that. If you look at something like a Thai clinch, where you're working the short range, where as you're pulling the shoulder back, there's your withdrawal. You're pulling the shoulder back to fire the hip forward, to fire the knee. It's exactly the same idea or the same concept. And it would be the same in a throw. It would be the same in an arm drag. There's a withdrawal going on within the body. The role of the coach is to look at, first of all, does the person fighting understand the concept of making the withdrawal? Because you can do it with the hip, you can do it when you're changing positions on the floor. So first of all, do they understand that idea of withdrawal? And the easiest way, like I said, was that pull back. And then can they apply it to their training, their specific training? So for instance, they're drilling on a dummy or with a live person. Obviously dummies have become very popular recently, mainly because of COVID. But can they get that free training in where they're working on these withdrawal reflexes, and they'll naturally work at a higher speed rate, and you see that their speed changes very quickly. So an easy way of working this again is snatch something out of the air. So go to snatch it, and you can see this arm isn't doing anything. So then when I work this arm in, all of a sudden the snatch is quicker. And that's an easy reference point, because a lot of our job as a coach is to make whoever you understand, make whoever you're training understand that point which you want them to go to, okay? My experience, a lot of the fighters I've worked with aren't that cerebral. So I have to kind of think of ways of explaining it in a language that they will understand. And most of them are extremely good visual learners, and that's why I have to come up with these little drills and concepts to help them understand that movement. Anyway, there's a few little ideas that I've used over a relatively long career now. For those of you that don't know, I was coaching Thai boxing back in the 90s, and I had guys who went on and fought out in Thailand, in Ramadan and Lumpini, but that was through, I forget the name of the camp up in Chiang Mai, Lana camp. So a lot of my guys went out there to train. And then we got involved in MMA back in the 90s, and then through the early noughties, etc. And we've been involved with various professional boxers over the last decade or so, okay? And also these concepts work very well with the general population, providing they have that focus that you're looking for in clients, in terms of they're the clients that can really focus in on their training and they're not distracted by family and business commitments, in terms of they're making their training a real focus for themselves. Okay, hope that makes sense, and hope that is of interest to a few of you. Okay, cheers.